Welcome to Good Enough with the Trauma Therapist, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to take control of your life, learning valuable strategies for healing and looking at mental health through a trauma-informed lens. Get ready to feel empowered and confident in managing your symptoms. And now, here is your host, licensed clinical social worker, EMDR therapist, and certified clinical trauma professional, Jamie Vollmoeller.
Good Enough, where we talk about the hidden struggles and profound strength it takes to be a mom in today's world. I am your host, Jamie Vollmoeller, and today we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for so many of us, burnout. But not just any burnout, the kind that creeps in on us, born from constant juggling acts of motherhood, work, relationships, and the impossible expectations we place on ourselves. If you've ever felt like you're drowning, like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough, or you're exhausted trying to figure out how to be the perfect mom, partner, employee, friend, daughter, sister, you're not alone. Today, we're exploring why burnout happens and how it affects every aspect of our lives and why so many of us feel trapped by it. So, what is burnout exactly? Well, burnout isn't just feeling tired after a long day. It's really a state of chronic emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress. For moms, it often stems from the relentless demands of parenting combined with work stress, emotional labor, and societal pressures to do it all and be the best. If we really think about it, how often do you put everyone else's needs above your own? You wake up early to make sure the kids are fed. You get them ready for school. You try to sneak in a few work emails, juggle meetings, or household chores. And then you spend your evenings doing dinner, homework, baths, bedtime, not to mention all the extracurriculars our kids get involved in. And when you finally sit down for a moment, you're still running through the mental list of what needs to be done tomorrow and what you didn't finish today. And it never seems to end. So you're constantly giving, and the idea of taking a break feels like it's laughable. It feels laughable because you're not breaking now, and there's so many things that aren't done. So how could you possibly take a break? It would just get worse, right? So let's talk about some of these signs of burnout beyond feeling physically exhausted. Burnout shows up as like irritability, a short temper, or what we might call mom rage. So you might feel disconnected, as if you're kind of just going through the motions, or maybe you found yourself losing patience with your kids over small things and feeling consumed by guilt afterwards. Been there. Especially when the kids are like nonstop and loud and running, and like even when they're like in the happy moments, sometimes it's just sensory overwhelm. Sometimes it's just too many things going on at once. And it almost feels like you can't think or finish a task. And then there's the emotional weight of feeling like you're not enough because you have this you have this overwhelm. So you're snapping at the kids and not acting as your best self because you're so burnt. So then many moms grapple with this like imposter syndrome, like believing that they're failing at everything, even when others might see them as like super mom or superwoman. But here's the thing, burnout can happen to anyone. And it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't make you a weak or a bad parent. It's actually a sign that you've been carrying far too much for far too long. So how do we wind up in this cycle? Because so many of us end up in burnout mode. So let's take a step back and look at how we get there. So number one, part of it is going to come from the unrealistic expectations. So we're told to be nurturing, patient, successful in our careers, present for every milestone, and don't forget to make self-care a priority too. And this just seems really, really impossible if we're the only one doing one of these things. So, I mean, for me, right, I will say, just even returning to work, I think for me now has been, even though it's my third and I'm a therapist, right, guys? So even now, the mom guilt is like a real thing. I am loving my maternity with my daughter. I don't want to go back. And I feel guilty for part of, well, so I will say it's conflicting. And that's also a part of like motherhood is a lot of mixed emotions, right? It's the, oh, I love my kids. I want to be around them all the time. And then it's also the, oh my God, I want to get out of here. Please let like someone help me escape this. And sometimes it's all at once. I feel like just have too many expectations. There's the expectation that to be and conflicting expectations. Like for me to be a good boss and a good clinician and take good care of my clients and be a good mom and a good wife and keep a clean house and make healthy dinners and be a good daughter and have time to check in on my mom and my grandma and my aunt and see all my family. And then it's just there's so many expectations and it seems like they never stop being placed on us. Especially if you have a hard time saying no, or if you're someone who really does enjoy helping other people. As someone who enjoys helping other people, I say yes a lot. So I think people ask me for a lot because I generally like to help people. But there gets to be a point where we take on so much that we can't. It's no longer enjoyable taking care of everyone else because we're no longer meeting our own needs. And it starts to feel like we're being used and abused. And I've talked about this many times, guys. If we're feeling like we're being used and abused, it's likely because we're not having our own needs met. And we need to look at that, right? And we're wondering why we're so exhausted if we're meeting everyone else's needs, but not making sure that you have time to, go out by yourself and do something that you actually enjoy besides running errands and doing grocery shopping, or, some other household related task that we tell ourselves is self-care. I mean, like real self-care, like really, like you don't have to worry about motherhood or your spouse or work or whatever. Just like you have a couple hours to go enjoy you. That is real self-care. So added to all those messages that we get from social media and our families, the social media, especially the perfectly curated snapshots of moms who have it all together and families that are absolutely perfect. No wonder so many of us feel like we're falling short. And what I want to remind you guys of is a lot of those people on social media who want to look like they have perfect lives. They're trying to convince themselves of that as much as they're trying to convince everyone else. So don't compare. It's not helpful for you. And often, you can take a couple snapshots and make it look like anything is reality in a picture, but you don't know what their life is outside of their highlight reel. And that's the highlight reel is not the whole story. And that's really, really important for us to remember. So what do we know about burnout and how to stop the cycle? Well, step number one is that, or the first thing is that burnout is real and you don't have to carry it by yourself. And that building a community is what helps us break that cycle. Because for a lot of us, burnout is because we're operating as like lone wolves, Long Islands. And we deserve to take care of ourselves too. So I want to go over with you guys if you're experiencing burnout, what are some pretty quick, relatable, easy strategies that you guys can employ to start to break this pattern and this cycle, because we cannot show up as our best selves for the people that we really care about and want to be there for if we are in chronic stress mode. If you are in a dysregulated nervous system, you cannot access the logical part of your brain. Like you are just not going to make the best decisions possible because you don't have access to all of the options because you're in fight, flight, or fawn mode, or fight or what some people call fight or flight or a reptilian brain. You're triggered, right? And when we're triggered, we're not thinking with our whole. We're not given access to our whole brain. So we don't have access to all of the options. So quick tips, guys, to help you when you recognize that you're in this chronic stress cycle, and you're feeling really overwhelmed. Number one is the pause and breathe technique. So I know that everyone hates hearing breathe, but I really want you to just take a few moments throughout the day, pause and take deep mindful breaths. And what I like to remind people is breathe all the way down to your diaphragm. For those of you who sang growing up, for me, singing was always a very big coping skill. And I think that's partially because it forced me to breathe all the way deep down in my belly to my diaphragm. So we want to inhale slowly for a count of 4. I'll demonstrate for you guys. I'm going to hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to repeat this 3 to 5 times. Again, so I'm going to repeat. So we're going to inhale for a slow count of 4. Breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4. That's the square breathing technique. You want to repeat that 3 to 5 times. So breathing is really, really important, guys, because it is us showing our nervous system that there is no actual threat. So what we need to remember is that in our brains, when we're in chronic stress mode, our brain thinks that something is really a threat, right? When that part of our brain is activated and in fight or flight mode, and we're like busy, move, anxiety, like overwhelm mode, it's because our brains are on high alert and they think that there is a threat. And by us taking that time to pause and breathe, and you don't have to do the square breathing, you can do a shorter in breath and a longer out breath. I prefer a longer out breath. And really, like, for those of you who have been dissociated from your body for most of your life, I will say that learning to just breathe and focus on the tension in your body. Like for me, I get a lot of tension in my chest when I'm in chronic stress mode. So one of the things that I will do when I notice myself in chronic stress mode is breathe into that tension in my chest and just breathe in and breathe out. And as I breathe out, notice how the tension begins to release. And I will do that as much as I need to release that tension. But that signals to my nervous system, because I'm regulating my breathing, that there is no threat. So my body, my physical body, will begin to calm down. And for a lot of us who have operated in chronic stress mode most of our lives, that is the problem. That is the cycle you need to break. Your brain does not know that there is no actual threat, so it keeps you on high alert. And therefore, every muscle in your body is tight. It feels like you're vibrating and overstimulated a lot, like 24/7. And if that feels like you, what I'm going to say to you, mama, is you got to work on that nervous system regulation, because you are going to be a better mother, a better spouse, a better employee, a better human overall when you're in a regulated nervous system, because you have access to that very smart brain of yours. And you're not going to be as exhausted, because living in a body that's under chronic stress is exhausting. Your muscles are chronically tight. Your chest is chronically tight. Everything hurts. And it's exhausting to battle with yourself all day, right? And when our body is that tight, we feel anxious. And thus our thoughts are going to be more anxious, and everything is going to be interpreted as if it is a possible threat, because we're in survival mode. We're just still trying to survive. And when we breathe and pause, we give our body time to recognize that there is no actual threat. Other things you guys can do: set micro boundaries. Identify 1 or 2 areas where you can say no. So if you feel yourself in chronic stress mode, I want you to pick one task that you can say no to. One task. One. That sounds really hard, I know, but just one. Or delegate it. Hand it off to someone else if it has to be done. Make your husband do it. Make your eldest do it. Ask your mom to do it. Protecting even a small window of time for yourself can help to prevent overwhelm and build resilience over time. So even just giving yourself that 5 minutes to not, do that extra task and give that 5 minutes back to you, even for you to just breathe for 5 minutes, will give you, will help to prevent that burnout over time. And it's a step forward to starting to prioritize yourself. And the next step is to schedule in 5 minutes free. Dedicate at least 5 minutes a day to do something that brings you joy. Whether that be listening to music, stepping outside for fresh air, reading a book or a blog that you really like, listening to a podcast. Start small, but build from there. Like give yourself 5 minutes to just be, just breathe. One of my favorite things to do is to sit outside. I'm very fortunate to have a very pretty backyard with lots of trees and wildlife that I like to listen to. And one of my favorite things to do for myself that is very grounding is go outside and just sit and try to name all the things that I see and hear in nature. Just being outside. That's very healing to my nervous system. Just having the sun on my skin or feeling the breeze in the fall, or the chill in the winter. Even in the winter, it's very grounding to almost even have the intensity of the cold on your skin. But we want to schedule in 5 minutes of whatever is going to bring you joy. And we got to start small and just build from there. It's just reclaiming little small moments, even amid a really, really hectic schedule. Right. And we want to focus on one thing at a time. Right. When you feel overwhelmed, I want you to ask yourself, what is the one thing I can do right now that will make me feel better or move things forward? What is the one thing I can do to make it just a little bit easier to breathe, or to make it so that, the day is just a little bit brighter? Tackling our priorities helps us cut through the mental clutter and reduce stress. I know for me that when I'm stuck in chronic stress mode, I feel like there's a never, and we get it feels like a hamster on a wheel with like all the things that you need to do. And it just feels like even when you do one, there's more and more and more and more. So just focus on what can you do right now? What can I do right now that's going to make me feel the slightest bit better, or is going to, relieve the tension in the situation just a little bit? Very, very important. And become a little more mindful of your transitions, right? Take a moment to transition between different tasks or roles. Give yourself time. One of me and my employees were talking this week about just seeing clients, right? And how for her as a mom, she noticed that, she needs that de-stress time. We work with clients that, experience really intense situations and emotions, and we're on emotionally for these people. And she noticed that it was hard for her to just rush home and transition right into bedtime with her toddler. It makes sense, right? Because her nervous system needs to be regulated. She needs to have time to compartmentalize, put all that stuff away, and put on her mom hat. That's valid. I can say that as a fellow therapist, that is valid. And one of the things she did was noticing that was becoming a really rough transition on nights that she worked past a certain time that was interfering with bedtime routine. She asked to change her schedule and make it so that she had a few minutes of 20 minutes to just recenter herself before she walked into her house and had to put her kid to sleep. And that is really, really important, because not only was that important for her, but it's important for her kid, because it's not just dysregulating or affecting her day. It's affecting her kid's day. It's affecting her husband's day. And then, she noticed that she'd beat on herself afterwards because of that, fear, because she'd feel guilty that she wasn't emotionally as available as she wanted to be for her child, or that she wasn't, enjoying being trapped under, bedtime routine. And I feel that, guys, like for me, especially now with 3, I've always co-slept with my kids. They'll grow up one day and they won't need me. And for now, if that's what makes them feel safe, then I think that's biologically, evolutionarily appropriate. But I have my boys who, would like to lie on either arm. And I'm very used to being pinned to the bed and rolling out like a ninja eventually. But having a newborn, that has made me so much more anxious. And it's that in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, well, the baby will wake up and need to breastfeed and I'm going to have to get out of here and then I'm going to wake them up. So I found that since I had my 3rd child, I really don't do well, like in the middle of my 2 boys, because it causes me so much anxiety thinking about if my daughter's going to wake up, specifically if my husband's at work and I'm home with all 3. So we've had to adjust some things just to make it so that I feel more comfortable during those times. But yeah, when it comes to transition times, like bedtimes or transitioning from work to home, or after you drop the kids off at school and transitioning back into, your home routine, finishing work, moving to parenting mode, just give yourself a brief ritual, like taking a few deep breaths before going into the house after your workday. I've had clients do that. They will take a few deep breaths, their steering wheel, take a stretch, say some positive affirmations, and then get out of their car and walk into the house. Just like reset before you enter the world of home. Very helpful in just making sure that you're setting yourself up for success there. Another thing that you can do is connect with people who support you. Reach out to a trusted friend or partner or supportive community. We very much encourage you to reach out to the Good Enough community. Join our newsletter, see what upcoming events we have. Being around people who understand what you're going through and aren't going to judge you, and having a safe, non-judgmental space to talk about the challenges that we have in motherhood, I think is so very, very important and so very, very healing. That's probably been the most healing thing for me as a mom, as a woman, is to surround myself with like-minded individuals who lift me up instead of tearing me down. And especially for those of us who feel like for most of our lives, we didn't get that push in a positive direction. We were kind of just told all the things that weren't measuring up. It's really, really validating to be surrounded by humans that, don't just knock you for your struggles, but encourage you and lift you up. Not that we don't call people on their stuff, because I think that is important, guys. And we all need to be open to receiving feedback on how our actions impact the people around us, our families, and other people, and how we're perceived. It's really important for us to grow, is to be able to receive feedback. But I think how feedback is delivered is really, really important. And being part of a community that is thoughtful in lovingly challenging you, because there's challenging and then there's lovingly challenging. There's calling you on your stuff, but also giving you the hand that you need to get where you want to go. Right. And having the right people around you can be absolutely world changing in whether or not you're going to be able to meet your goals. Right. So I hope that these things, these quick tips, give you some peace of mind. So to recap, I want you guys this week to practice. If you're feeling an overwhelm, we're going to try to pause and breathe more often. Say no. When you feel like your nervous system is getting really overregulated, say no. Delegate. That's okay. Make sure you're scheduling in 5 minutes for you a day. 5 minutes is a doable task, ladies. 5 minutes for you. 5 minutes to sing, 5 minutes to dance, 5 minutes to be outside in nature and feel the sun on your skin. 5 minutes to read a book, whatever it is that's going to make you feel like you are validating yourself or paying attention to yourself and your own needs for just 5 minutes a day. That's where we need to start. Just 5 minutes a day, pay attention to you. Be mindful of the transitions from work to home or home to work for the stay-at-home moms, when the kids are going to come home, because that's a very different feeling than when the kids aren't home, because, being a stay-at-home mom is rough too, and you got a lot of tasks to manage and a lot of things that are put on your plate because you are home. And, connect with people who lift you up. Engage in communities of women who lift you up and make you see your own worth and push you to be a better person. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a woman who might feel the same way. You are not alone, and together we can find a way through. Be sure to stay tuned in next time as we unpack what EMDR therapy is so different and why it's becoming a go-to for parents who need more than just surface level relief. And over the coming weeks, we're going to be exploring practical ways to break free from burnout, reduce stress, and find true deep healing, not just quick fixes. So one approach that's been really changing for many is EMDR intensive therapy. And we're going to dive into what EMDR is, how it works, and why it's especially effective for moms facing burnout and emotional overwhelm. Especially because of the busyness of our schedules. I think that so many women really struggle to take time on a consistent basis for themselves. And also on top of that, like, to go deep in therapy requires you to be vulnerable. And if you have to be vulnerable on a weekly friggin' basis and return home to taking care of your kids and all of the household stresses and all of the work stresses, it's not always realistic. And I say this, guys, as someone who did EMDR therapy, and there were plenty of things that I could get through in weekly therapy. And there were parts of me that would not allow for us to go further until I did like a intensive session where I had the actual time to process through what I need to process through. And that's because our brains are designed to protect us, right? And sometimes there are experiences that are really, really emotionally overwhelming and we dissociate from them. And our brains are protecting us from those experiences. And we don't want to open those up and have to close it back up and continue to function. Like, the reason I love intensives is it gives you the time to really go deep and work through the core problem. And you have enough time to go deep and work through it and feel better by the end of your session, versus trying to work through these issues in, weeks or months, or years, even in therapy. Talking about the same distressing issue week after week in therapy is really, really distressing. And a lot of us really don't want to do that because it is overwhelming to our nervous system and it does have an effect on our functioning at home and at work. And that is valid. So if you're one of those people, EMDR intensives is amazing because they allow you to go deep really, really quick. And they're just as effective as a year's worth of therapy. If you come for a 3 to 5 day intensive and work on a specific issue, your results are going to be pretty much the same a year out as if you went to weekly therapy in the course of that year. And that's kind of beautiful. And it's quick enough that you can schedule that time out and feel more regulated and then begin to get the results you want on a much quicker basis. So in the next episode, we will be getting into all of those benefits of EMDR intensives for burnout. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a mom who might feel the same way. You are not alone. Together, we can find a way through. Be sure to tune in next time as we unpack what makes EMDR therapy so different for why it's becoming the go-to for parents who need more than just surface level relief. Thanks for listening, and remember, you are enough.
Thank you for listening to Good Enough with the Trauma Therapist. We appreciate you listening. while our host may provide some personal and professional advice. We want to remind you that this show is for entertainment purposes only. Each individual situation is unique, and good enough is not a substitute for mental health treatment. If you need a therapist and are located in New York or Missouri, feel free to reach out to us at liemdr.com or resilient-mo.com.